My name's Marcus Ellis from Cleveland, Ohio. Born and raised here. Run a shop called Terminal Speed right downtown Cleveland. Service and custom bikes. Been here in this shop for, I think it's 6 years now. Really didn't have much when I moved in here. Just a toolbox and this one wooden bench that I built. And over the years, just been buying tools and building it up. My dad and my uncles rode Shovelheads when I was a kid, so I grew up going on like poker runs and swap meets and stuff like that. But I never imagined I would ever be able to do it, I guess, in my young mind. It was unattainable. They were expensive. And then in my younger years, I was skateboarding a lot, playing in bands and drinking too much and kind of being a maniac, so motorcycle was the furthest thing from my mind. Until my later 20s, and I kind of started to settle down a little bit and decided I want to get a bike. And my first bike was a 1975 Sportster, pretty close to stock setup. And as soon as I got on that thing, I knew right away, I was hooked. Like, knew right away, this is what I'm gonna do. I didn't know shit about it, but I knew I was going to, So I bought that bike and I basically blew the motor, blew the head gaskets, going like 100 miles an hour on the shoreway. Didn't know how to fix it, I wasn't mechanically really inclined before that. I was never into cars, it was just skateboards and drums really. So it was a whole new world for me, but I was, like I said, it had me. I bought a manual, I talked to anybody that would listen, that knew. Started hanging around a couple old timers that were friends of the family that were, Harley mechanics, and that led me into hanging around in shops and ultimately took me to Phoenix, Arizona, where I went to MMI and learned to be a trained factory technician. While I was there, I met a guy that runs a chopper shop. At that time, he had just moved out of his garage into his first small shop similar to this size. He didn't know me from the next guy. I just walked in the door and started talking to him about what I was doing and basically just started showing up at his shop and helping him because I was there going to school and I didn't really have anything else going on. So I would go to class in the morning and then I'd just go to his shop and help him. He's done very well for himself. You might know him. He's Jeremiah, Love Cycles. I think everybody knows him by now. And I was his first lackey shop rat, so I got the factory training at the school and kind of the chopper training there. And it was good to learn both ends of the spectrum. So I came back here, I worked at the dealership, and then I worked at the local chopper shop, the Gas Box, where I learned a ton from Jesse. That guy just knows so much more in his years too. He has so much more experience than really anybody I met. So I was fortunate to work for two guys that really, really know their shit inside and out, and kind of set me on a good track for doing it on my own. Born Free, what an honor to be on the stage. I've been going to Born Free since the second one. I was at Born Free 2 when it was still a block party in Signal Hill, and that was my first one. We rode out there from Phoenix and it was just such an incredible experience. And then I haven't been to every one, I missed a couple over the years, but I typically go back and I'll go out to Phoenix and help Jeremiah finish up his bike and then go to the show, and it's wild to see how it's grown over the years. Really, really, really grown. There's just no arguing. It's the biggest motorcycle show in the world, so Born Free is it. It's the top tier. So to watch all the stuff over the years and see all the really cool bikes, it's just definitely an honor to finally be on the stage. I think even, 8 years ago, even 10 years ago, I told myself, that was a personal goal. I want to be there. I want to be that guy. I want to be on the stage one day. I know I will. And it took a while, but here I am, happy to be there. This bike that I'm building is a 1952 Pan shovel Harley. I like to build traditional kind of 60s style choppers that work. You know, everything functions mechanically, runs nice and sound, but retains the aesthetic. And I like my personal style. I like stuff that's lean and mean. You know, I like, when I get in my car, I drive slow. When I get on my bike, I want to go. You know, everything nice and tight and compact and ready to get it. So that's what I'm trying to do with this bike. It's going to be a stock bore, mild stroke motor, dual throat carb, Kennedy rocker boxes, hydraulic clutch, hydraulic foot clutch, and hydraulic rear drum. So I try to take all the stuff that Harley provided and either cut it up or change it and modify it to meet my needs. I'm not really a fabricator. I'm not a metal guy. I'm a mechanic. I'm more the wrench. So everything that I do to modify the bike, my aim is to improve its function, not necessarily its aesthetic. Of course, I still want it to look good, but I want it to work well. My friend Tim, who's a really good fabricator, he started his own thing as well, Fiorucci Fabrications, and he's really been a key part in helping me with like the fine fabrication stuff that I'm not well versed in. The gas tank idea I had, so I've built maybe 6 or so bikes at this point, and the 2 things on choppers that I never have that I always wished I had were a horn and a speedometer, but it's really difficult to make that look cool. It's very difficult to make it look cool. So for this bike, I decided it's gonna get a horn and it's gonna get a speedometer. So for the speedometer, I decided to hide in the gas tank. So basically I cut the filler spout out of the stock gas tank, moved it to the top right corner, which allows you to hold a little more gas, you know, when you're filling your bike up. That's the high point. And the nice thing about this setup is that the gas cap and the speedometer are the same diameter. So putting them across from each other, it's a very nice, clean look. It looks natural. That's another thing I aim for. I try to make everything look pretty natural, pretty fluid, or, you know, as the factory might have intended, had they thought of it. And then the horn, actually planning on doing like a FXR style where they just hide it under the transmission. But it'll have a nice button on the handlebar. Someone pulls out in front of you, instead of revving your bike up or yelling, you can honk your horn. Simple stuff, but until it's happened to you on the road and you're like, fuck, I wish I had a horn. Yeah, well, then you'll find a place to put one. The one thing that's like my thing that I like to do is make drag bars with stock Harley internal throttle ends. I've done all the different eras that they used, but I really like everything to be cleaned up and hidden. I don't like stuff hanging off all over the place, kind of a neat freak that way. So I took the 49 to 53 style throttle spirals, cut them off, and take a set of drag bars and cut them out and basically make a sleeve and plug weld it and make some drag bars out of it. That way all the wires are run through the handlebars, through the bolts, so you don't see any wires or cables or anything hanging off. And pretty much done that on every bike. Everything else too on the bike, all the wire will be run through the tube, everything hidden, just clean. I like everything just to be clean. I also like the rear fender to be clean. I'm not really a sissy bar guy. I like a nice clean line coming off the back. So I've got some marker lights that I'm gonna run molded into the frame, 2 sets. So there'll be a run light and a brake light. So 2 on each side, welded bungs into the frame, and all the wires run through the tubing and up. So there'll be no wires and no light hanging off anywhere. Again, streamlined, clean look, all molded in. It'll just be, what's the word I'm looking for? Bitchin', yeah, it'll be bitchin'. Trick little things like, so the rocker boxes have split rocker boxes, which would require 4 external oil lines, which I personally don't like. So I'm going to run Evo style oiling, which pumps up through the lifter, through the push rod, directly to the rocker arm. So there will be no external oil line, which if you don't know that walking by the bike, you'd never notice. But to me, like, I'm really excited about that, you know, which a lot of people probably wouldn't even notice. But I like those trick little things. For the oil tank, using a 38 style horseshoe tank, but I cut all the fittings out of it, and it's getting banjo return and vent lines in the front. That way it keeps the lines tight to the tank. So with the rear exhaust pipe being high and tight to the oil tank, you can't have the lines hanging out. So it keeps it real nice, tight and clean, and looks very classy. And then the feed, what I did there was I cut the stock fitting out, and I came up with this idea to use Triumph feed fitting, and Lowbrow sells the filter and the threaded bung. So I cut the hole out, basically weld a threaded bung in its place, and then you've got a screw in filter right in your oil tank. So when you drain your oil, you can just pull the feed line off and unscrew that filter, rinse it out, and then you've got a hidden oil filter, which that's another thing that's really hard to do on these big twins, is to run an oil filter that's not just hanging out somewhere. It's really difficult to hide that. The frame started as a stock swing arm Shovelhead front half, got a Hafley Brothers Pan head replica back half, and marry those two together, cut out the stress tube in the frame, which basically tricks the eye into making it look taller, stretched up, but it's not at its stock dimensions still. It's not raked, it's not stretched, but by removing the stress tube and bringing the gas tank up, it makes your eye think that it's bigger, if you will, without actually changing the geometry. And for this bike, I've always wanted, really like the look, and I've always wanted to do a molded frame. So this is going to be the first one that everything, the neck will get plated, and all the joints, everything will get molded and smoothed out. The gas tank is going to get undermount, so that'll all be like Frenched in and molded in. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's really going to go for like the late 60s, 70s kind of show look. Black. I mean, they only come in black. So it'll be all, and again, the motor will be all polished. Everything's going to be polished, nice, polished aluminum, chrome, and glossy black. It's just the classic. You can't go wrong with the classic look. Hot rods, yeah. Performance choppers, if there is ever an oxymoron, but that's what I go for. Terminal speed to me is going for broke. Just going for it all the way.